Hi everyone, my name is Shauna in case you don't know, and welcome back to another video. In today's video I'm going to be doing my May reading wrap up. May wasn't a good reading month for me because I was very busy in May. So basically what happened in May is I went to Anime Impulse Seattle, and in order to go to Anime Impulse Seattle I had to be really on top of my schoolwork because technically the week of Anime Impulse Seattle I had a midterm, but I managed to get all my work done super early so that I could take the midterm as soon as it opened, and then I was able to go to Anime Impulse Seattle. For the Spanish courses that I've been taking with my school, basically the midterms open Wednesdays and then they're open until Saturdays. And then after you take your midterm, you have like 5 hours of schoolwork due on Sunday night. So it's a lot of work, but I crammed it all in and I managed to do it, and I went to Anime Impulse and I have not turned in any assignments late, and I got like 98% on that midterm. And I'm so proud of myself. Then after Anime Impulse, I stayed in Seattle for a week to hang out with family before I went to Olympia to go to Chibi Chibi Con. So May was a very busy month for me. June is going to start off a little busy, then it will slow down a bit. Then another con is coming up, so we'll see how much reading I can get done in the month of June. Also, happy Pride Month everyone, to anyone who celebrates and to anyone who's part of the LGBTQ+ community. This month is so much fun. I am currently looking at my window, which has my giant ace flag over it. I have a neighbor across the street who is very homophobic and is like doing a political campaign, and in her campaign she's speaking out against LGBTQ+ people, so it felt like the biggest FU that I could if I hang my ace flag in my window where she has to see it every time she looks out her bedroom window because our windows are on the same level as each other. So let's get back on track for my May reading wrap up. I haven't calculated my average star rating yet, but I'm guessing it's probably not gonna be, well, it's probably gonna be 3 point something or like a low 3. I didn't have any 5-star reads. I've only had 2 5-star reads this year. I don't know what's going on with that. I had 3 3-star reads, 1 4-star read, and a 1-star read. So I'm guessing that'll be like 3 point something. Without further ado, let's get into this. The first book that I read this month helped me finish my goal of finishing the Arc of a Scythe series, and this book is Gleanings. This book is by Neil Shusterman, but there's a bunch of other authors that like helped with these stories. So some of these authors are David Yoon, who is Nicola Yoon's husband, and I love Nicola so much, Jared Shusterman, and Sophia Lapuente. I'm not sure if I said her last name correctly, but that is Neil's son and daughter-in-law. There's Michael H. Payne, Michelle Nolden, and Joel Shusterman, who is another one of Neil's kids. So this book is a short story collection, and I feel like short story collections are never that amazing. There's always some stories that I really love in short story collections, but then there's other stories that I always hate that tanks my overall rating of the book and my overall enjoyment of the book. So I gave this one 3 stars, and I will talk about it more, but 3 stars is generally what I give most like short story anthology collections, because the good and the bad usually average out to 3 stars. So in case you don't know, the Scythe series takes place in this world in which death has basically been conquered, so people are chosen to be scythes, and these scythes have to kill off people to help with population control. So in this one, Gleanings, it is focusing on different periods of time and following different scythes and different people in the scythe world. So like some of them will be characters that you know from the main series and giving a backstory to them. And I think there's like one in here that involves like future, like after the main Scythe books, and a lot of them take place like during the Scythe series as well. So it gives you a wide range of different like stories to look at. So I'm going to give you my star rating for each one. Generally I found most of these to be mediocre, but there was like one that I really didn't like and a couple that I liked more than others. So I gave The First Swing by Joel Shusterman 3 stars. I gave Formidable 3 stars. Formidable is giving the backstory to Scythe Curry. I gave Never Work with Animals by Michael H. Payne 4 stars. It was hard to read this one at several points because there's a lot of like animal cruelty and animal death and animal murder in it. However, that dog is one clever dog, and I love karma. I love when karma happens. A Death of Many Colors. I gave A Death of Many Colors 3 stars. Unsavory Row 3 stars. I gave A Martian Minute 3 stars. A Martian Minute, here's the thing, like I didn't like any of the characters, but I felt like A Martian Minute was really important because it explains something that you learn about in the main series in like very briefly, and it gives a full in-depth look into that moment. And if you hear the name A Martian Minute and you've read the first 3 books, you probably know what event I'm referring to here. I gave The Mortal Canvas by David Yoon 3 stars. I gave Siri 2 stars. I just don't like reading like AI type devices and stuff. I don't like reading from their perspective. I always find that really bland. I gave Anastasia's Shadow 4 stars. Anastasia's Shadow is probably one of my top favorites in this one because it follows a relative of a character that you meet in the main series. Then I gave The Persistence of Memory by Jared Schusterman and Sophia Lapuente. Again, I'm probably saying her last name wrong. I gave that one 4 stars. I thought that one was really elaborate and creative. I gave Meet Cute and Die 3 stars, and I gave Perchance to Glean by Michelle Nolden 4 stars. Perchance to Glean was really interesting because it explored like a charter region, and again, you would know what a charter region is if you have read the main series, so it was really interesting to see more in depth one of the charter regions. And then I gave A Dark Curtain Rises 4 stars. And A Dark Curtain Rises I feel like was very perfect to read directly after finishing the main size series because it's really fitting, and I feel like it could lead to a spin-off series if Neil ever decides to do that. So yeah, that was my thoughts on the Gleanings. Most of the stories were fairly decent, but I felt like most of them bordered more on like mediocre as opposed to like ones that I'll remember for a long time. Then I read my favorite book this month, which I read as part of a Fable reading group, and in case you haven't heard me talk about this like book club reading group before, I will link it down in the description below. Basically, some of my friends are hosting a Throne of Glass like read along for the whole series. So we've now read the first book, Throne of Glass, and the second book, Crowd of Midnight by Sarah J. Maas. Next up, we'll be reading The Assassin's Blade and starting that on June 3rd. This video will probably go up on June 3rd or a little after June 3rd. So if you are wanting to join the group, then feel free to join it and join in with Assassin's Blade. I'll tell you what the first book is about, but obviously the series has progressed a lot from there because a lot happens in the series. This is a romantasy, I think is what people are calling it now, fantasy plus romance. It follows this girl named Selena, and Selena was an assassin until she was captured and became a slave, and she was working in some mines. Then one day the prince comes and he takes her out of the mines and he says, if you join my father's competition and win this competition, you have to work for my father for a few years as his personal assassin, and then you get your freedom. So it's a really interesting premise, and I've been really enjoying this series. I liked how fast-paced this one was. It jumped into the action right away, and the action kept up for the whole story, and that was really cool. I really loved Kale. He is my favorite character in the series. Despite anything wrong that he does, I'm still a Kale simp, and I'm really interested in seeing how he plays out with the rest of the series based on what happened with him in this book, is all I'm gonna say. Dorian is my second favorite character. I always want to say Dorian, but like I read the name pronunciation guide and it said Durian. So I loved his character development in this book in particular. The 2 boys are my favorite characters. I found that Selena has really grown on me. I'm still not like the biggest fan of her character, but she's definitely a lot better than the first book, because the first book I could barely stand her. I loved the romance in this book, specifically in the first half of the book. However, I feel like there was 2 problems I had with this book that prevented me from giving it 5 stars. The first one is that basically there is this character that is introduced, and his backstory is like briefly dumped in there about how he was groomed and coerced into prostitution at a young age. And I felt like that's such a serious subject, and it could have explored him so much, but the book just never did that. And I felt like that was a huge miss, because I felt like there was so much to explore with that and how messed up that is and how that shapes his opinion on things, but that was never explored. Oh, the other issue that I had with the book, I can't even mention because it would be like a massive spoiler, but like I'll try and address it fully once I finish the series. But I'll use like spoiler warnings and stuff before I address it. I don't know. I've been noticing a pattern of like Sarah J. Maas's characters that she makes explicitly people of color, and some things that she does to them and some ways that they're depicted. I've actually gotten into fights with people about this online before, because people are like, look, she has a character of color in here. It means that she's super diverse. It means that she's having great representation. I'm like, it's not what it means. I mean, it's good that not all of her characters are white, but there isn't many characters of color, and the portrayals of them aren't necessarily the best. That's all I'm gonna say, because I don't want to spoil anything, but that's like the major flaw to the Throne of Glass series, because it could be so perfect, but I feel like the characters of color needed to be worked on a little better, to be a little more sensitive in their portrayal and their purpose in the story. Yeah, again, I am not going to go into that farther right now. There is a couple good articles that I saw about this topic, so if you're curious about this topic and you've either read the series or you don't care about spoilers, then I recommend looking it up. You can specifically look up the character Nehemia and the portrayal of her as a character of color, since she is the main character of color in this series. So yeah, this was a 4-star read. I really enjoyed it. Did have a few flaws, but it's still really enjoyable, and I'm excited to be continuing this series with the book club that I've been reading this series with. The next 2 books I read were both manga. I read Demon Slayer Kimetsu Academy Volume 2, and I'm really sad that Volume 3 hasn't been translated into English yet. I saw this out in Japanese and in French, but it has not been translated into English yet. So this Kimetsu Academy is just an AU of Demon Slayer where they go to school. So look, it's super cute and adorable, and it's really light and fluffy. I almost gave this one 4 stars, but I felt a little uncomfy about one thing. The one thing I felt uncomfy about is like the Mitsuri and Obanai romance. I didn't have an issue with it in the main series. However, because of the school AU, it makes Obanai a high school teacher and Mitsuri like be a college freshman, so she just graduated. So like their age gap isn't that bad, but also he's like in love with someone that his students that he's currently teaching had gone to school with the year previously, which is a little sus. However, everything else was really great in this one. I loved the story with the cat. It was so cute. I loved the plot twist in the hot spring story, and I love Tokido's story so much. So I gave this one 3 stars. I do recommend this spin-off series, but it's very light and fluffy, so don't expect something super deep and intense. It's just fun fluff, and sometimes you just need that in your life. Sorry if you can hear my dog Astoria crying currently. She was downstairs bugging her sister, who's a senior dog, and so I took her upstairs, and now she's crying. She's really upset because she isn't with me and she isn't with her sister. But I'm like, if I bring her in here, Hermione's gonna be pissed. Oh, I spun the chair too much. Hermione's right there. And if I let her back downstairs, she's gonna be bugging her sister again, and I just don't want to deal with that right now. Then I read Kingdom Hearts Volume 1. This is by Shiro Awano. I don't know if I said their name correctly. So this is a short manga, and it is basically just telling what's happening in the video game of Kingdom Hearts, the first game specifically. I do have the series for the second game. I haven't read that series yet. I also have the series for Chain of Memories, I think that's what it's called, but I lent that one to my sister-in-law. But I read all of Chain of Memories, and now I'm going back and reading the first series. So this series is about this boy named Sora, and Sora is living on an island when an island comes and sweeps him up, and he ends up in this mysterious land that is far from his home, and he has been separated from his friends. While he's in this mysterious land, he runs into Donald and Goofy from the Disney series, who are looking for King Mickey because King Mickey is missing. The characters travel through different Disney worlds and have to defeat these evil creatures through the series, so it's really fun. If I'm being honest, for the first game, I think I played like the first 20 minutes and then I got fed up with it because I tried to play it when I was a kid and I had no patience for video games. But I should probably go back and play the first one at some point. I've played the third one all the way through. I just haven't played the first, second, or Chain of Memories all the way through yet. So yeah, I ended up giving this one 3 stars. It is super lighthearted and fun. I think it definitely works better in a video game format, but this was still enjoyable for what it was. Then I read my least favorite book of the month. It's called Unbound. It's by Adrian J. Smith, and it is part of the Quarter Life series. So I got this one off of NetGalley. I don't know why this one was on NetGalley because it says that it was published in 2015, but for some reason I got it on NetGalley, I think in like 2022. So that was a little weird. But anyways, I thought this one would be amazing, and it turned out to be an utter disappointment that I wish I could unread. So this book was pitched as a sapphic vampire ex-witch romance, and I mean, I guess you could say that that at least describes some of it, but it's also pretty terrible. So in this story, there's this vampire named Faye, and God, how do I even describe this book? Because I really do not like this book, and it's really, like, terrible. So there's this vampire named Faye who has to get close to Molly, who's a witch, and Molly is very secretive, and it's hard to get into Molly's compound, and Molly is protecting different, like, magical creatures. So Faye is trying to get in to get Molly because there is something that Faye wants to know, and Molly is the only one who can help her figure out that answer, which you'll find out what that is exactly later. There's some mob boss stuff in here, there's tons of spice, there's action, and it sounds promising, but I guarantee you if you read this book, you will be disappointed. So I'm not gonna dive deep into the spice on here in the book because I don't feel comfortable talking about it in detail, but know that these are some of the most disgusting spicy scenes that you will ever read. And I don't say disgusting in the sense that, like, I'm ace and it disgusts me. I say disgusting in the sense that, like, the things that were happening, like, I feel like shouldn't have been happening. I feel like you shouldn't just include spice whenever you feel like it to include spice. I feel like it should serve a purpose, shouldn't be awkward, it shouldn't be gross, there shouldn't be questionable morals with the spice. So, yeah. All I'll say is that there's a troll, a stone troll and vampire spice scene, and okay, I can't even talk about that anymore. I am, like, cringing just remembering that scene. So the biggest issue with this book, to me, besides the spice, was the inconsistencies. So there is, like, 3 inconsistencies in particular that really bug me, but there's more inconsistencies in the book. So first of all, the vampire Faye, she breaks her leg, and she gets taken in by Molly and taken care of by Molly and gets her leg in a cast. However, being a vampire, she has really fast healing abilities, so she has to pretend to have a broken leg so that the other characters don't realize that she isn't human. Here's the thing though, the book wasn't consistent in that. The book only had her faking a broken leg when it was convenient for the story, so sometimes she'll be, like, sprinting down an alleyway with a fully healed leg around these humans, and these humans aren't like, let's investigate and interrogate her and figure out what's going on. They're just like, oh, yeah, she is sprinting with a broken leg, it's fine. Like, there's so many moments in the story where it seems like the story just forgets that she is supposed to be pretending to have a broken leg. And because of that, like, if you realistically look at that, the characters would have been like, oh, she isn't human very early on in the book, but it never does that because it's very inconsistent with this whole broken leg thing. There's also a pneumonia thing. She gets told she has pneumonia early on in the book, the vampire, and it isn't brought up again until, like, the very end of the book. And I'm like, okay, she has no symptoms of pneumonia, she just casually told she has pneumonia at the start, and then it's forgotten about until the end of the book. Like, pneumonia is a very serious thing. They wouldn't have just forgotten that she had pneumonia and let her go on all these action adventures while having pneumonia, and also she has, like, no symptoms, so I don't even know what this whole pneumonia thing is about. And I feel like just this book wasn't consistent with health conditions at all, those 2 in particular, but there's some other inconsistencies with health conditions as well in the book. There's also an inconsistency of this little boy. So Faye is trying to find these 2 twins and make sure that they're okay and safe. And these kids are connected to the main villain, so these kids are, like, a huge part of the book. At least for the first 50% of the book, until the book just casually forgets about these boys. Then at the very end of the book, the boys are brought up again. And I'm like, where were they for that, like, 40–45% of the book? Like, they just disappeared and the book seemed to forget that they were there. Like, I feel like Unbound needed a few more people to look at this and read through it before it got published so that these inconsistencies could have been caught. Because I think full well this author may have had some good ideas in mind, but kept forgetting what things they started early in the book that they needed to continue. And I've been writing my own novel, and this is something I've personally discovered that I have to be careful about, that I think a lot of new authors have to be careful about as well. And that thing that I've been noticing from writing my own story is that sometimes you'll forget that a character's injured, sometimes you'll forget things like what their hair color is, even though you said it earlier in the book, but in order to be consistent with your story and make sense to your readers, you have to carry on the things that you started at the start of the book and carry them on through the rest of the book. So you really have to keep track of all these details and everything that you, like, started early on in the book. And I just felt like Adrian J. Smith didn't do that with Unbound. Some other issues I had with the book is I didn't like the vampire parts of the story at all, which is weird because I love vampires, but honestly, it felt like Faye was only a vampire when it was important for the story. And so it felt like for a lot of the story, she was just a human with no vampire features. I also just didn't like how vampires were portrayed in this book. I would have preferred more of a stereotypical or traditional approach to vampires. I also feel like there were so many parts of this fantasy world that could have been explored more and that would have been interesting to explore more, except it never did. The book kept like dropping different mythological creatures into the story and never elaborating on them more, having them have much relevance to the story, which was really disappointing to me. So I ended up giving this one 1 star. I do not recommend Unbound, especially if you could not handle cringy spicy scenes, because these spicy scenes are just horrendous. Like, oh my gosh. So those were all the books I read for this month. I have to go because my dog won't stop crying. I seriously have not been able to figure out how to film videos without my dog Astoria causing problems and crying. And it's been a struggle. I'm gonna keep exploring and seeing if I can figure something out. She's just a big crier because she loves attention. So feel free to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to me if you haven't already. I try and upload a video at least once a week, so stick around for more videos. I hope all of you have a fun Pride Month. I am really excited for Pride Month, but Pride in my city, well, the biggest city near me, Portland, isn't until July. So I have to wait until July before I go to a Pride festival, unless I can squeeze in going to a different city. But yeah, I'm really excited for Pride Month and just celebrating all the diverse identities this month. I hope all of you have a great week, and I'll see all of you in my next video. Until next time, goodbye!